little bit about the journey that you've taken that's made acting your career?
Yeah. Yeah. So ever since I could remember, I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't say it out loud to anyone because I just thought it seemed so silly. No one in my family's in the arts. My dad's in business. And so I kind of just kept it my little secret. And I took the traditional route. I went to university, I got a corporate job, and I was so unhappy. Like I just hated every second of it. And I think there's a difference between being able to do something and want to do something, right?
Sure.
Like I was able to do it. I was thriving, was making really good money, but I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. So I decided to quit and leave it all behind and have no plan B and just dive into being an actor. And I told no one because I knew that if I told anyone in my family out of love and concern, they would try to talk me out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and so 7 years later, here we are, and it finally, I'm starting to see the payoff, but it took a long time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked the talent sometimes if they ever do have a plan B because acting is a tough business. It's like and not it's very glamorous and yes, it's wonderful and all that, but there's a lot of people who want to be in this job. So
Yeah,
um, I get a lot of nope, no plan B. This is it or nothing, right? So
yeah,
that's always funny to hear that.
for sure.
Was has there been a moment in your career, a part of an audition that solidified that yes, you knew that you wanted to be an actor?
That's such a good question. I think it would have been the first sort of big American project that I booked. It was a recurring on Why the Last Man. It
Hmm.
unfortunately got canceled after its first season, but the scale of that show was just massive. The creative team behind it, and it was my first time being able to play a character for multiple episodes and sort of learn what that was like. And being an actor from Canada, you really want, or I will speak for myself, I really wanted to work on American projects, but they're really tough to get.
Yeah.
So I would book a couple of small Canadian things, but booking that American show really gave me a lot of hope and confidence. Like, okay, I can do this. I can work on these larger scale productions. And so it gave me a lot of drive to just keep going. That was the shift for sure.
Okay. Yeah, you've done a lot of work in television. Is that your favorite medium to work in, or are you basically going where the work takes you?
I'm right now, I'm going where the work takes me, but I love television because I feel like you have way more time to spend with your character, right? You can
Sure.
dive deeper. It's not just that 2 hours. You can really, even something like you sort of have an overarching arc, but then you have these like mini arcs, right?
Yeah.
Because the character spends so long on a show. So I feel like there's more to explore and a lot more opportunity to be creative in television. So, and the paychecks are longer. So,
Good point.
yeah.
Good point. Okay, so let's talk about your role on From. Can you tell me a bit about the process that landed you that role?
Yeah. So I got an audition for it right before Christmas last year. And usually you get maybe 48 hours to turn an audition tape around. And with this one, since it was right before the holidays, they gave us like 3 weeks. So you kind of got to decide, do you want to hand it in the new year or do you want to get it done now? And I was like, I'm going to get it done now because I go into a food coma over the holidays. So I got to get this done. So I submitted it. And for me, it's always the roles that you really want, you don't get. And when I saw, recurring on From Rookie Cop, I was like, oh, this would be amazing to work with Harold Perrineau. I'm never going to get it. And then in the new year, I got a call that Jack Bender wanted to have a Zoom call. And I hopped on. I didn't know that I was the only actor being called back at the time. I thought I was still up against a lot of other people. Would have been nice to know that, but they don't tell you that. And then, yeah, the call went great. And they flew me out to Halifax like 2 weeks later. And then I entered the world of From. So it was weird because I was watching the show during my audition process to sort of get the tone of it and the vibe. And
Sure.
I became obsessed with the show. So I thought, oh no, like now I'm in love with the show. If I don't get it, I'm going to be even more devastated. And then to go from watching it in your living room to like 2 weeks later, you feel like you're being transported inside your television. Like now you're acting opposite the people that you were just watching at home. So it was a surreal experience.
Thank God you got it.
I know. Oh my gosh.
I've talked to a few cast members from the show, and they say the same thing with straight from the heart that how much they enjoy working with this cast. It's such a wonderful group of people to be creative with. How has that time been working with this cast for you?
Yeah, so this experience was new for me in the sense of I've worked on location like away from home before, but not for this long of a period of time.
Okay.
And so it really taught me like none of the actors are from Halifax, right? So we're all uprooting our lives and we're living in Halifax for months on end. And so you really realize like, wow, not only do you want to love the show that you're working on if you're going to be that far away from home for that long, but you really want to like the people that you work with because we don't know anyone else in Halifax. So we go to work and obviously work is fulfilling. It's a great show, but then personally you and socially you want to enjoy hanging out with these people because we're all that we have out there. So I can't imagine doing this process and not enjoying the cast because that would be a very lonely experience. So it just taught me in the future that if I'm ever in a position where I can start to pick projects, that it's not just about the project, it's about the team behind it for sure. It takes up so much of your time. Like it's not worth it if you don't enjoy the people that you work with.
Definitely. I think a lot of people take for granted that the actors, oh, what a great life, this and that. But a lot of times that happens. People are uprooting their lives for sometimes months at a time. And some people have families and kids and whatnot. And even if you don't, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So coming into a wonderful atmosphere like that is such a huge thing.
For sure. It was a big lesson for me. So yeah, I got lucky that everyone is so great. Thank God.
From is such an interesting series. It's a great story, but it has such a wonderful atmosphere, and there's such a feeling of dread that hangs over every episode. I don't know if I've seen too many shows quite like that, where it's very tense. Does that help you as an actor? Help your performance working on a set like that with an atmosphere like that?
That's interesting because I think speaking in terms of my character, you know, she's new on the show, so she hasn't experienced that level of dread yet, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously she enters the show, she makes this grave mistake, and now she's coming to terms with the fact that she's stuck. But she's sort of new and fresh to this situation. And so she doesn't feel the weight of that dread that some of the other residents
Sure.
have been feeling, that they've been trying to escape for years. Nothing works. She's energized and has vigor and wants to figure it out and thinks that she can really help get these people home. So that's kind of, I feel like she adds a new dynamic to the situation. So she hasn't felt that dread yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
I believe it's the most recent episode where you had the one-on-one with Harold as Boyd. It was quite a confrontation between the two.
That was not fun.
Oh no, I guess not. Do you guys have a chance to rehearse those roles, or as an actor, do you like coming into that more cold and just jumping into the tense part of the situation?
Yeah, I find working with Harold, he's such a pleasure to work with. He brings something new every single take. I personally don't like to over rehearse something. I like to keep it fresh in the moment, but we do block out the scene physically and kind of see where we're going to be standing and stuff like that. But no, we keep it like pretty fresh in the moment, but it's always, we will never move on unless we feel like we've given it what we wanted to, right? So Harold will always check in, like, do you feel like you got what you need? Is there anything else that you need from me? And he's just a really great sparring partner. And what's so good about the show is I feel like they really let you creatively take chances and try different things. Like you'll read a scene on From and I'm like, I could do this like 20 different ways. They're like, hey, try it 20 different ways, and whatever's garbage, we'll cut it out, and what you see is what they chose. So it's a very like fluid sort of dynamic environment.
That's very interesting that you have that kind of freedom to do that, because that's not a usual process for a lot of shows because they're on such time restraints.
Yeah.
Did you know that going in, that you're going to have that kind of time?
Well, look, like you can't try it a million different ways and take up the day. But no, they are very open to seeing what you can bring to the table. Coming from, I've done a lot of Hallmark films. And I was just saying this to someone recently. I was saying that oddly enough, I find Hallmark more challenging than something like this, because Hallmark has a very specific formula, right? Like you read a scene and you're like, okay, they're only going to let me do this 2 different ways, right? They know what they need. They know what the final product is going to be. And so you sort of have to stay within those bounds. But something like From, just seeing how open and how they allow you to play, that was like such a blessing as an actor. I was new to the show, so I didn't want to kind of push it too much. But yeah, I really enjoyed that experience.
Okay, me sitting over here not expecting you to talk about Hallmark movies being more challenging than working on From. That's very interesting.
Yeah, because there's a right and a wrong, where it's like on From, it's like there's no right or wrong. Like you're going to try it, and if it works, maybe the actor gives you something and then you take the scene in a whole different direction. Whereas Hallmark, it's like, okay, what is the way that I have to do this? Right? So yeah.
That's a great distinction to know and to have. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of working on darker themes like something like From? And is the horror genre in general something you're a fan of, both personally as an actor?
Yeah, so for me, the darker the material, the better. I like and in terms of being a horror fan, I do watch horror films, but I'm more of a fan of like the psychological thrillers. Like I like the mix of the physical danger, but also like the darker facets of the human psyche. Like I like knowing why a character is doing what they're doing, not just a jump scare. I like that exploration of like evil minds.
The darker themes are definitely a different sandbox to play in, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As we talked about a bit earlier, acting isn't an easy business to make a career out of. What was the most difficult challenge for you up to this point, or biggest hurdle for you?
I think for me, it's, coming from like I went to university for finance, and then I got a corporate job, and it's very much math based. And so there's a formula, there's a right and a wrong. There is the more you study, the better your grades are. There's a linear progression with how much work you put in, you will see that result. You work harder for a job interview, you'll get the job. But with acting, there's just no rhyme or reason. You could be the most talented actor and not get the job. You could work your ass off in an acting class and see 0 results. Like there's no rhyme or reason. The work that you put in, you don't necessarily see the equal results. And so the hardest part has just been continually trying to put in that work, even when there's no results, and you show up day after day after day and hope that in the future something will land, even though nothing is happening right now.
Good point.
Yeah.
So what else do you have coming up in your career?
So right now I'm riding the From wave.
Yes.
I've also learned with this show that it's like filming the thing is one experience, and then the release of it feels like an entirely different journey. Just like hearing the fan speculation and interacting with the audience, and doing press about it and interviews. And this is my first time sort of diving into that world. And it honestly feels like a full-time job to me. And yeah, I have a couple of things in the works that I can't talk about right now, but that's the great thing about being an actor. It's like any day your entire life could change. It could take you somewhere completely different. I'm also hoping for season 4 renewal. We don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm taking it day by day.
That's another good point, though, talking about the fandom, because it's one thing for a show to become popular. It's another thing to have a fandom embrace it like they have, because the show is basically such a mystery from episode to episode. There's obviously clues from season to season what's going on, but it creates that kind of fandom where there's so many people trying to guess what's going on and what character's doing what. As an actor, that must be, especially if you haven't experienced it before, that must be really interesting to dip your toe into that for the first time.
Yeah, it's been a really thrilling experience, because it's like we ask the audience for 1 hour of your time a week. We just ask you to watch our show on Sunday night when it's released. But not only has the fans given us that, but they'll watch the show and then they'll rewatch it multiple times,
Yeah.
hop on Reddit boards and Facebook groups and talk to people from completely different countries about theories and trying to piece together this puzzle box of horror. And it's so fulfilling as a creative because it's like you're making a project that you love, then you give it to the audience and they love it so much that they invest so much of their time in trying to figure out the show. And I've only been on the third season. I can't even imagine how fulfilled the creative team and the actors who have been here since the beginning must feel to have people care about the show that much, where they're writing like essays about
Yeah.
it. Like,
Well, I can tell you as a fan, when I first started watching it, the premise intrigued me. And then I got into it, and it didn't take too long for me to go, okay, wow, this has so many possibilities going forward if they keep going the way they are, and they have kept going. Kudos to everyone involved in front of and behind the camera, because they've kept the level of the quality very high and kept everyone guessing with some really good writing and performances. So as a fan, not just as the media guy, as the fan, it's been a joy to watch.
yeah, no, I agree. And I think the audience is starting to realize like every single detail in the show is there for a reason.
Yeah.
Down to the artwork, the colors, the props, like nothing is just, oh, throw that in there. It's been thought of and
Yeah.
sorted, right? And mapped out. So and that's why I like the weekly release, because I know it is a bingeable show, but I think the weekly release adds to the engagement of it, right? Because now you have the whole week to sort of figure out what just happened and where you think it's going. And I think that adds to the level of engagement, is the slow release of the show.
It's funny you mention that, because I have access to the whole season. I've only watched up to episode 5.
Oh, okay.
But when I realized that I'm going to have a chance to talk to some of the cast, I stopped myself from going too far forward, because first of all, I didn't want to spoil something in the interview and make it hard to edit and all that professional wise. But I wanted to keep myself surprised, because I love being surprised too.
Yeah.
I could go and watch all the rest of it now, but I'm resisting and trying to go week by week with everyone else, so I
Yeah.
can join in the fun, because there's a lot of people I know who watch it, and we can speculate and have fun on the side, and half the time be wrong, but that's the joy of it
Yeah.
anyways, right? So
No, that's
yeah,
smart. That's smart.
yeah.
We get access as the actors to screeners, and so we can sort of watch in advance. And they were like, "Do you want screeners?" And I'm like, "No, I already know. I've read the script, but like, no, I'm gonna watch it with the fans every Sunday night."